You guys see my hands?
Yeah.
This is a Chad interview. And then Liam, you can start whenever you're ready.
All right. So Chad, maybe you could start off with telling us how you got your start with just camera work in general, photography.
Since I was a kid, I always had a camera in my hands. My parents would take me to the grocery store and buy these little disposable film cameras, which I don't even know exist today anymore. When they would take me on vacations, I would just snap what I would see. I didn't have any, any artistic aspirations at that point. But that's how it started out. And as I got a little bit older, I would get film cameras. And in high school, I took some photo classes, learned how to properly compose and put a little bit more of an artistic approach into my photos, and then developed the film, which a lot of people don't even do nowadays. Eventually, I would get digital cameras, very low resolution ones, and work my way up into higher resolution ones. Went to college, San Jose State to be specific. Originally, I went there with a focus on video production, but I quickly realized that I wanted to do photography. I took it more serious after college, and then just started building from there and worked my way up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So which high school did you go to?
Kennedy High School in Fremont, class of 2006.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit more about the hyphy era?
The hyphy era. That was a time to be alive. The hyphy era started in the Bay Area. It was a cultural movement. I guess it could be equated to what they had in the South called the crunk movement. The hyphy era was colorful clothing, fun music, just I guess the kids would say wilding out, dancing in the streets, partying. I mean, there were some negative things that went with it, but for the most part, it was a fun time.
Okay. And you filmed a pretty famous video at that time. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The video that I filmed that became popular during the height of the hyphy movement was called Kennedy's Tell Me When to Go video. A rapper from the Bay Area, one of the godfathers of rap in the Bay Area by the name of E40, him and a very other prominent rapper from the Bay Area named Keek the Sneak, they had a song called Tell Me When to Go, which was huge. Washington High School, which is another high school in Fremont, decided to make their own version of this of the music video. Theirs came out, and this is in the early days of YouTube, man. This is like, there was like, I don't know, thousands of users on YouTube at the time. It was a small platform at that point. They made this video. It became like baby viral, and the kids at Kennedy said, because I had somewhat of a video production background at that point, they kind of, I don't want to say forced, but they asked me to make one. They forcefully asked me to make a version for Kennedy, which I did. And man, that caused so many problems in Fremont. There was back and forth between other high schools and Kennedy. There was like actual threats of violence. The video itself went baby viral as well. And if you were to visit my YouTube channel right now, that's the oldest video on my channel, the first upload. Yeah, and it to this day, it still gets comments and shares and views. And kids from Fremont, they know about it. And that's one of the first things they mention to me if they don't know me from a hole in the wall. They're like, oh, you're the one who made this.
Okay, so you mentioned E40. Was he like your first client, or how did you get in touch with him?
E40 was not my first client.
Who was your first?
My first client, wow, that's a good question, because I mean there were times where I'd take like lunch for payment for a photo shoot. That's a good question. My first real client, June of 2009, was a rapper from Oakland who's become a friend of mine named Eddie Projects. Him and his crew came to Fremont for a photo shoot, and they were my first official clients. In regards to E40, I met him for the first time in like May of 2010. He was doing an album signing at Rasputin in Berkeley. I went there just as a fan, waited on the long line for my 30-second interaction with him. And when I approached the table he was at, I hit him with the, hey, I do photography. and he just pointed me over to this guy. This guy is his manager. His manager gave me either his email address or his phone number, and I instantly got on it, told him who I am and what I do. And yeah, E40 and his crew have been friends of mine and clients and just good people to be around since 2010.
Okay. And I've seen that you've worked with a lot of other artists. Can you maybe list off some of the artists that you've worked with, some of your favorite?
I could list off a lot of names I've worked with. I don't want to come off as sounding braggadocious, but I mean, like, I've worked with the biggest musicians in the world, prominent Bay Area figures, some of the biggest athletes in the world. I mean, a name that would stand out to a lot of people is Drake, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar. I've photographed people like Colin Kaepernick, who, for anybody that doesn't know, was a very big quarterback in the NFL. Marshawn Lynch. I mean, the list goes on. Too short. I mean, I could sit here all day and name names, but it's been a blessing to be able to call these people. Some of them friends, some of them clients, but it's been a big blessing.
Who would you say had the biggest fan presence?
So the biggest fan presence out of any of the people I've worked with, Drake. I mean, being that he's one of the biggest names in the world, I mean, the amount of fans that came out for the concert I shot of his was gigantic. I don't want to say surprisingly enough, but there's a rapper by the name of Schoolboy Q who's a label mate of Kendrick Lamar. When I photographed his album release, also in Berkeley, the line was ridiculously long. Like, it wrapped around the block. Kendrick Lamar's events always draw a lot of fans, but I mean, I guess depending on who the artist is, they get their amount of fans that come, and it's big for them. But yeah, I would say Drake would probably be the biggest. How do I word this? They had the most. He had the most amount of fans come to the concert.
Have you ever seen any times where it kind of got out of hand, maybe with the fans?
I've definitely been involved in events that I've been photographing that got out of hand. I've photographed club events where there's been fights. I mean, that happens often. You're putting people into an enclosed area where there's alcohol and egos and things like that, and there's been fist fights. I've photographed an event where there was a shooting outside. For me personally, just having to move through crowds of intoxicated people is not the most pleasant. I've had people grab my camera before, but luckily, knock on wood, nothing really bad has happened to me during these situations. I usually have people by my side that look out for me.
Would you say it's the alcohol that contributes a lot to that kind of like how those fans act, or more so the music, or like what is it? Like, is it a combination of the two?
The reasons that I believe that these situations occur is a mix of multiple things. The music could be, I guess, not the most peaceful of music. You're putting people into an environment where they're tightly packed together. There's alcohol and other substances, involved in that type of partying. But I don't want it to come across that this is always the situation. I'd say this is the minority, that this happens less frequently as opposed to things not happening. But I would think it's a mixture of multiple things.
Okay, so then on the flip side, what has been like the most memorable kind of fan interactions that you've seen?
If you don't mind me asking you, do you mean that I hag with the artist or the fans hag with the artist?
Fans had with the artists that you've witnessed while working.
I often see that fans are just jubilated to see what I'm assuming is their idol. People sometimes wait hours and hours to just have a 30-second interaction with an artist. And just the looks on their face, they see these people as whether it's their hero or almost like a deity. And some people are just like, they have this connection with the artist or the athlete. they feel like they know them just because they see them on TV or they listen to the music or watch them play sports, and just the look in their eyes is just like that of love. So I think that's yeah.
How does the hiring process look for you going to these events, like these pop-up events that you're talking about? Do they reach out to you, or do you reach out to them? How does that work?
For me to get booked for events, a lot of times it's the artist or their team reaching out to me. A lot of times it's myself reaching out to them and their team. So it really depends on the relationship with the client. Are they returning clients? If they are, they're probably going to contact me first. If it's somebody who I'm like, hey, I want to work with them and I haven't yet, I usually have to initiate that contact.
Okay. You mentioned earlier working with Nipsey Hussle. Can you elaborate more on that?
So in regards to Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace, one of my most booking clients thus far is a pretty prominent promoter, a rap event promoter by the name of Daniel Mbe. Daniel, for I would say a 5 to 6 year span, was throwing some of the biggest after parties and club events in the around rap culture. He booked me for 3 Nipsey Hussle events. 2 of them were in San Jose. 1 of them was in San Francisco. The 2 in San Jose were awesome. The 3rd one in San Francisco, there was a fight in the club as Nipsey Hussle was walking in, and I'm assuming it was the security who didn't allow him to proceed. But the interaction I had with Nipsey Hussle was cool. He seemed like a cool guy. There's a photo of him in my portfolio, and those 2 ones, they went well.
I've seen your work on magazines and billboards. Can you also tell me more about that?
It's been a blessing to have had my work featured in various areas, different outlets and things like that. Specifically with billboards, there's a prominent rapper, Oakland-based rapper by the name of Filthy Rich, who I had a chance to work with quite often. He released an album with another prominent Bay Area artist. I photographed Filthy Rich's, I guess you could say headshot. It was a little bit wider than a headshot, but his photo for the album, and that was featured on billboards across the Bay Area. My work has been featured in numerous magazines. The one I'll mention right now is a magazine based out of Kansas City, Missouri, by the name of Grid Magazine. It's ran by my friends Nina and Mac, and they've done a couple interviews of myself and put them in the magazine along with some of my work.
Okay, and what do you usually shoot on as far as photos?
I photograph specifically on Canon. I'm a Canon guy. It's like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. You're either Canon or Nikon, and I choose Canon.
Okay. What kind of lens do you use?
My all-purpose lens is a 24-105L lens.
And is there anything you wouldn't take a photograph of at an event?
Aside from the illegal and the immoral, the only 2 things I won't photograph are naked men and funerals.
Have you ever been asked to put your camera away at an event?
I have been asked to put my camera away at an event when the person didn't know why I was there, but once they realized who I am, what my purpose is at that particular event, it was okay. But yes, initially I was asked to put my camera away.
And how open are these artists to getting their photograph taken, even though their team hires you?
This goes with anybody on the planet, but specifically for high-profile people, some they love the camera. They want you all in their face. They want you to capture every move and everything they do and say. Some artists, they don't like it. They won't pose for photos. They get annoyed after a few minutes of it. It really depends on the person, but I think that goes with anybody in life.
Do you have a favorite photo that you've taken of an artist?
I've taken hundreds of thousands of photos over the course of my career thus far. That's a good question. Do I have a favorite photo I've taken? Man, I can't say that I do, but I would say that the ones of people that are no longer here, and we're not even talking about in the realm of music or arts and entertainment, but when families book me, right, and I've photographed a family member that has passed, they cherish those even more because the person is no longer here in the physical sense. So those are really, really important to me.
Do you mainly stick to filming music artists, or what's your kind of, what do you like to take photos of? That's the question.
I love all aspects of photography. Dealing with high profile people, of course, is exciting because, you know, not everybody is able to step into that world. But is there a particular thing I like to photograph? I can't think of one thing off the top of my head. Just being behind the camera, being able to capture that moment in time that can never be changed is the exciting part.
And then, can you tell me about how you got into the industry?
So, specifically into the world of professional photography.
Or, sorry, more of like the music industry photography.
Okay. So how did the way I got into the music industry portion of the photography world is before I actually started my company of Stein Photography with my first digital SLR camera, I would basically talk to my friends that were underground rappers from here in the Bay Area saying, hey, let me take some photos of you. And they probably weren't even quality at the time, but I did it anyway. And they would like them, and they would tell people they would know who were more, I guess you could say, regionally known rappers. And then I would do work for them. And I would tag along with them, or they'd bring me to things. And that would just allow me to meet other people in the industry, whether they were video directors or other rappers or management, things of that nature. And it became a word of mouth thing, an exposure thing, and I just started working my way up the ladder, and here I am today.
You mentioned production, like music videos. What's that like behind the scenes? I know a lot of people don't get to see that.
You worded it very well. To explain to people what it's like at music videos, so I don't want to also sound braggadocious in describing this, but the reality of the situation is the amount of people that are in the world that can experience these things is so minute. I mean, we're talking about a fraction of a percentage. These are closed sets. You can't get on them unless you have a reason to be there. And just to see what it's like, you get to see the full-on production that surrounds a music video. They're long days. One of the things that stands out is you're going to hate the song by the end of the day. They're playing it 100 times because they're doing numerous takes of the performance and things like that. But it's just really cool. You get to see the artists in their natural element. You get to see crew members working really hard to perfect things. And once again, not to sound braggadocious, but you can have that thought in your head that, hey, I'm here and I'm getting to experience this, which is really cool.
What's it like working with these rappers at those music videos? How are they on set and stuff like that?
As I mentioned before, so really depends on the artist, how they are on set. Everybody's a human, right? So they may be having a bad day. They just want to get the job done and get out of there. Some of them are having a great time. They're performing and they're just laughing, and it really depends on who the artist is. But for the most part, the music video sets I've been on have been fun. You know, I'm working hard, get sweaty by the end of the day, but they're typically pretty fun.
How safe would you say the music videos are?
Depending on the type of music video shoot will determine how safe it is, right? If it's a low budget music video shoot in the middle of an unnamed neighborhood in an unnamed city with no security, it can be unsafe. If you're at a high budget music video shoot on set that's surrounded by security gates and there's bodyguards on set, you're good. Things are not going to happen in there. And if they do, it's going to get handled very quickly. So the bottom line is, if it's a low budget shoot and you're in an area where things tend to happen, it probably can.
Out of concerts, pop-up events, and music videos, out of those, what would you say would be almost unsafe, or where things happen that are kind of out of the ordinary, where people act
Out of events or pop-up events, concerts, and what was the third one?
The music video shoots.
Out of music videos, pop-up events, and concerts, which ones are the most unsafe? I think once again it still is dependent on the location, who the artist is, what kind of crowd they attract. It really depends. I don't know if I could nail it down to one of those three. You could have an unsafe concert, you could have an unsafe pop-up event, you could have an unsafe music video shoot. You could have a super safe music video shoot, a super safe concert, especially at a big venue where the police department has to provide security. It depends on the situation.
What's the tipping point? Where does an event go from safe to maybe not so safe?
I think an event goes from safe to not so safe when security can't handle it anymore, and there's just a flood of people going in a direction that they're not supposed to go. And when there's almost like a mob mentality, even if there's not really supposed to be ill intent behind their actions. Like, I'm not saying they're trying to harm somebody, but maybe they're just trying to rush where the artist is. That could become dangerous. But I want to state that this doesn't happen as often as people think. Especially in today's day and age, the proper security precautions have been put into place to prevent these things from happening. But yeah, I would say that when things get out of hand is usually when there's just a rush of people going in a direction that they're not supposed to go.
Who would you say has the most security?
Who has the most security? I'm going to say people like a Drake, a Kendrick, a Snoop Dogg, just because these are the some of the biggest names in the world. Usually the bigger, the higher profile a person is, not only in music, but also in acting, in sports, they're going to have a larger security presence. And, it's understood that they need to have that.
And then being surrounded by these artists, working with, big names, have you ever felt like out of place or like you couldn't even believe it that you're there? Or how is that, working with those people?
Being in these situations, yeah, there is a moment where you're like, I don't want to say out of body, but there often is a moment like, whoa, I'm here right now. But then you step back into reality, you realize you have a job to do, and you ground yourself and be like, I'm here for a reason. And I don't ever take it for granted. Like, even these artists that I've worked with 50, 60 times, I still realize it's a blessing to be in that position. And I don't even want this to only be about rappers and singers and actors. Being hired by even a family to photograph their kid's second birthday, it's a blessing. Any opportunity that I'm given to capture somebody's moments for them to cherish for the rest of their lives, I consider a blessing.
I've seen that you've met Snoop Dogg. Can you tell me how that was? Any memorable memories from that?
So when I photographed Snoop Dogg, a friend of mine who's a very prominent rapper, entrepreneur, philanthropist, community activist by the name of Mr. Fab from North Oakland. He's been very supportive of me over the years. He had an event at his store in downtown Oakland where Snoop Dogg was appearing. Snoop Dogg and Mr. Fab are very good friends. They collaborate together. I was photographing that event, and I guess one of the memorable things from that particular event is just realizing that exactly how you see Snoop Dogg on TV is exactly how he is in person. He's just this lively, cool, upbeat guy.
And you also mentioned working with the Loiter Squad. Can you tell me more about that?
I don't want to say I worked with the Loiter Squad. So just to kind of correct you on that respectfully, I had a chance to be around Earl Sweatshirt and Mac Miller, rest in peace to Mac Miller, and that was at a studio down in Van Nuys, California. They were filming an episode of their Loiter Squad show on one side of the studio, and I was on the other side on set of a music video. So I had quick interactions with the two of them, photographed both of them, and it was just it was just another thing that I could say, hey, I did that.
With the position you're in now, would you say that was calculated, or did you kind of fall into where you are now?
With where I am now, calculated. That's an interesting way of putting it. I don't know. I that's something I gotta think about. I don't know if I ever said to myself, this is where I'm gonna be at. Like, I'm gonna work with these people. I'm going to have made this amount of money. I'm going to be interviewed by the students at Ohlone. I'm gonna be in a magazine. I don't know if those were ever, like, I didn't put them on a board and check them off. I think what I can say to answer that is, I made it a point to work my way up the ladder and gain a level of success. And I don't mean success in terms of monetary compensation or net worth or anything like that. Success in being happy with what I've done, what I'm currently doing, and what I will do.
And then, what's your thoughts on the Bay Area?
Before I answer that, are we talking about just music, or what are we talking about? Because the Bay Area, that's a complicated puzzle.
Culture, rap, artists.
My thoughts on the Bay Area, culturally, music-wise, is we have our own style out here. We always have, and we always will. There's an independent mindset out here. You could look at the E40s, who he has his own label. You could look at the Mr. Fabs, who created his own. He's got his own club, his own clothing store. We create our own out here. We determine what's cool in our eyes. We don't follow trends. And I think if it stays on that path, we'll be good. And if, hey, any love and respect we get from the outside is appreciated. I know for me, I was personally born in Brooklyn, New York, which is a completely different beast than the Bay Area. But what I was getting at is, I appreciate all love, respect, and support that comes from anywhere in the world. But when the Bay Area accepts you and you're from the Bay Area, you're good.
You mentioned, so artists in the Bay Area, right? Like E40, they're starting to sell, not just make music, but move into different businesses, right? Like selling alcohol or food. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on artists that, musicians that step outside of music and they have other business ventures, I think that's great. You should diversify your portfolio. I think you should have multiple revenue streams. You always want to have something to fall back on. And that's something I usually teach the youth that are trying to get into this department of this area of film, photography, music production. I say, hey man, put your all into that, but have something else to fall back on. You don't want to be a rock bottom if your first venture fails. So I think it's great diversifying your portfolio.
Okay. And then, as far as E40, how long have you worked with E40?
How long have I worked with E40? I met him in like May of 2010. I want to say I started shooting with him later that year, beginning of 2011 at the latest. I wasn't necessarily hired by him at that point. I may have been on set of his music videos or at some of his events through a different person. But I still remember the day that, he really started noticing me and then became a client and eventually a friend.
And who are you a fan of outside of your work?
Who am I a fan of?
Music.
People that I haven't worked with, or not just people I've worked with?
Like, are you working for people that you're a fan of?
I am definitely working for people I'm a fan of, right? So one thing I try and teach the youth that are in this field is be a fan in your head when you're around these people, but don't show them that you're a fan, because you're gonna mix in with all the other people that are fanning out over these people. I am a fan of a lot of the people I work with. I'm a fan of people I haven't worked with yet, and I hope to work with them in the future.
And then I see that you've been to Berkeley. A lot of people go there for events and things. Would you say location has anything to do with things that fans, like how fans act?
Does location have an effect on the way people act? That's an interesting question. I don't know. I can't speak to every location. I think maybe the environment, meaning like what kind of event it is, what comes with that event. Are we talking about there being a bar there? Are people consuming alcohol? I think there's a lot of things that can affect that. You mentioned Berkeley. Of course, I've shot around the city of Berkeley, but one of the venues that I think you were alluding to was Rasputin Music in Berkeley. I've shot a lot of in-stores there, autograph signings, And typically, as a matter of fact, I can't even think of one bad situation that's happened there inside of the venue. Outside of Rasputin, on Telegraph, things can get a little dicey, but inside of the store itself, I can't recall anything bad happening. Knock on wood.
Earlier you mentioned Oakland being your second home. What's that like working in Oakland or even just visiting?
Oakland, Oakland has shown me and given me so much love over the years. Some of my closest people, some of my best friends, some of my most returning clients, people that look out for me are from Oakland. Oakland is if you know about Oakland, I don't really need to describe it. Oakland is a city you don't play around in. Oakland is a city you go to for a reason, and you should know your way around. You should know people. But thankfully for me, I have a lot of love in every side of Oakland, east, west, and north, all the different neighborhoods. And I love going out there. I love Oakland. I've often referred to it, I don't want to say jokingly, but lightheartedly, as my second city. I've never had a residence out there, but I'm so comfortable out there, and so many people love me out there that, yeah, I will call it my second home.
All right, and then I'll open it up to anyone else who has questions.
Yeah, if you could answer towards Liam still, that would be fine. But yeah, anyone else questions?
Yeah, what does music mean to you?
Music to me means a form of therapy for myself in certain situations. It is obviously expression for the artist. It is a way to escape reality when things are going bad, especially. Music is something I've had a love for, and I don't have any musical talent, so hopefully my photography was a way for me to get into that world.
You've shot at an open gym premiere in Oakland?
I have shot at Open Gym Premiere in Oakland. That was this year. My friend Mr. Fab, he has like a week-long birthday celebration for himself, and the closing event for his birthday week was at the gym in Oakland. He had just a fun basketball game. The basketball legend Ron Artest, who also goes by Meta World Peace, he was the guest there, and it was just a good, fun time.
At venues and at concerts, there's often different types of crowds, where there's crowds that are really aggressive, or there are crowds that are really relaxed and kind of enjoying the mood. Would you say that depends on the artist, or would you just is that the people or what they're doing there? How would you describe how people would interact with one another, or how they act at concerts and festivals?
I think very, very similar to what I mentioned before. There's so many factors that contribute to how an event's going to go, how a concert's going to go. Yes, it's the artist and the type of music they put out, right? Some people put out happy music, some people put out aggressive music. That's a fact. Is it a small venue? Is it a large venue? Are people stepping on each other's toes, literally? Is there alcohol involved? Are you putting people together from an area where they have problems with each other? There's so many factors. So yes, it is the music, it is the venue, it is the amenities, if you want to call them that come with the venue. It's a mixture of all kinds of things. But like I mentioned, in 2023, things are put into place to try to, I guess, diminish the possibility of bad things happening. Nobody wants to have that on their hands. Venue owners don't want to have a bad rap. Venues have been shut down because there's been fights or shootings or violations of any kind. So things are really put into place to prevent those kind of things from happening nowadays. But it still, unfortunately, occurs.
You mentioned a shooting outside of a club. Can you tell me more about that experience?
What I can tell you about the shooting outside of the club was, I think, May of 2017. I was booked to photograph a club event in downtown San Jose. It was just like any other club event I had photographed. I don't want to mention the artist or the name of the venue, but I will say it is one of the bigger nightclub venues in downtown San Jose. Things were going like according as planned, and nothing was really different, but the vibe started changing later in the night. You could see out the front door, people were getting agitated. whether they weren't allowing more people in, I don't really know the exact situation. At one point, security couldn't hold the door anymore, and there was just a rush of people that came in. Maybe it was 100 people. I don't know. I wasn't super bothered by it, but I could tell that the vibe was changing. I continued to do my job, and that was the night that somebody grabbed my camera. Not to take it away from me, just trying to be funny and like grab my lens and turn it towards them, which was not cool. You don't touch another photographer or videographer's camera without permission. Shortly after that, gunshots rang out outside the club, and whatever happened, you know. It's unfortunate, but somebody either got shot at or shot. It's unfortunate.
Has that ever happened another time where someone grabbed your camera, or is that the only time?
That was the only time somebody grabbed my camera whom I did not know personally, and it was slightly aggressive. I don't even let people hold my camera. It's like, I don't like people touching my camera. There have been a handful of people I've let hold my camera. My brother, a couple of my best friends in the industry. But as far as somebody grabbed my camera without permission, no, that was the only time.
Do you shoot on film at all?
I have not shot on film in a long time. I don't have anything against it. That's where I started at. But man, where do you even go to develop it nowadays? Like, I'm sure it exists, but it's hard to come by nowadays, I'm assuming.
When you work with artists, is it their security that, you know, kind of protects you and what you're doing it, or do you have to get your own security that kind of runs the show with you?
I've never hired my own security. I don't know if that's an ego thing, just having a street mentality and the things I've been around. Sometimes I'll bring people who are very close to me, people that are like brothers to me, some of my best friends, and they'll look out for me in the ways they deem appropriate. When I am shooting with people who have hired security, professional security that know me, yeah, they'll look out for me. I'm not their priority because I'm not necessarily their client, but yeah, especially if they're my friend and they know me, they'll keep an eye on me.
So this is kind of a personal question for our group, but do you have any advice or recommendations on taking a camera and filming concerts and outdoor public events?
Be more specific, like what kind of advice are you looking for?
Like just to make sure that like our camera's safe, that we're safe.
Good question.
Stuff like that.
So you have to be vigilant in 2023. Not only when it comes to work, you got to watch yourself going to a grocery store nowadays. Specifically, working with camera equipment, audio equipment. These are expensive pieces of equipment, right? You look like food to a vulture. You shouldn't be by yourself. If you have the means to hire professional security, by all means do it. If you don't have that luxury, just have people watching your back, literally and metaphorically. Be aware of where you're going. What kind of neighborhood is it? What's the I don't want to use the word clientele. Who frequents that area, right? Is this a high crime area? Are you around where there's security? You know, I'm talking about security for a shopping center or something like that. Just be vigilant, know your surroundings, and keep one eye in the viewfinder and one eye on everything else going around you.
Have you ever turned down a gig for photography?
Before I answer that, are we talking about once again for safety reasons or in general?
Yeah, for safety reasons.
I have never turned down a gig for safety reasons. I'm not Iron Man, but I'm not scared to go anywhere. I grew up around the stuff. I've been to these neighborhoods. I frequent these neighborhoods. No, but I'm also not ignorant. I'm not unaware of what could happen. So with that being said, I make the phone calls ahead of time. You know, this doesn't apply for everybody, but if you know somebody in a neighborhood you're going to where things can get a little hectic, you should make a call. Let people know where you're going to be. But I've never turned down a gig for safety reasons. I have turned down gigs, but definitely not for safety reasons.
If you had to photograph one music artist for the rest of your career, who would it be?
If I had to photograph one musician for the rest of my career, I'd have to find a different subject to photograph. I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And one person, I'm not even gonna lie to you and give you a fake answer. There's definitely people I want to photograph I haven't yet, but not one person for the rest of my life. It's not something I'm gonna tie myself down on.
Who are some dream clients then of yours?
I want to photograph Post Malone and Jack Harlow. I think just based off personality, they just seem like cool dudes that would be fun to work with. I'd like to work with a rapper by the name of Twista, who's a legendary rapper. I would like to work with a guy named Common, who's a legendary rapper. I'm fans of these guys. But specifically based off of personality, from what I could see on TV, Jack Harlow and Post Malone both seem like cool people. So yeah, all four of those guys. But let me add to that. I'm willing to work with just about anybody. So.
Sorry for cutting off. This is another advice question, but for example, if we wanted to, go to a venue and also record, since you have more experience in that and how you can kind of interact with artists and kind of get inside and work on that, how would we be able to film at venues and do certain things like that?
So to film or photograph at a venue, an event, I think it's best to have contacted somebody ahead of time. Liam, if I could say your name on camera, which I already did, the way you and I met was you came to an event I was photographing with E40. To my knowledge, you just came and hoped for the best, and it worked out for you, which is great, but that's going to be a very small amount of time that's going to happen. So my advice would be to contact, whether it's through the venue, through the artist, which is not always your best option. You want to go through a publicist, a manager, or somebody like that, a promoter, and then see if you can get hired, or for an up-and-comer, see if you're allowed to just photograph it or film it free of charge and offer them the footage or photographs. So my advice is to definitely contact somebody ahead of time. If you want to chance it and see if they'll let you in, you can chance it, but just don't be dejected when they don't let you in.
How are these rappers to hang around them? Like, what is it like? Not everyone gets to experience that. What is that like?
Every rapper is their own person because every human is their own person. So some are standoffish, some are quiet, some are verbose, some are wild. It depends on the person. I don't think that I necessarily want to describe any of these people's personalities just because, for privacy reasons. But it just depends on the person. Just like some of your friends might be quiet, some of your friends might be obnoxious. It's the same with artists. Everybody's got their own personality.
For a photographer, you're uniquely articulate. You're uncharacteristically articulate.
Thank you. Is that a question or a compliment?
Compliment.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you were talking about gates, security gates. So I imagine that's changed a lot since you first started in 2009, 2010. Can you characterize, it used to be kind of, people could move around and there wasn't that underlying threat or danger. Is that my imagination, or how do you characterize that?
This is still directed at Liam, correct?
Yeah, sorry.
No, I don't think security gates and security measures came into play when I started in 2009. I'm sure it was there way before that. I think just nowadays with the way things are going, there's probably stronger security measures that are in place. As far as security gates, this usually applies to closed sets, studios, and things of that nature, where you need to have that extra layer of protection, which is good. You wouldn't want somebody just wandering into your home, so you put up a fence or you put up a screen door or something like that. But I think they existed way before I started doing photography.
I don't think we used to have that.
Really? Here or?
Anywhere. I mean, I think there's a whole nother level of security. But anyway, I have one other question for you.
Sure.
When the music, the backbeat, and when it's really going, it's, the audience is intoxicated. What happens? What happens when the music, or in your estimation, what happens when the music kind of grabs people and affects people?
My observation of others, correct?
Yeah.
When the concert's going, when the club's going, and the music is loud, the fans are just immersed in the situation, right? I would assume, I'm not in their heads, but I'm guessing they've just forgot about all their problems. It's an escape. There's a lot of joy. Sometimes there's tears. You know, if an emotional song comes on and the words hit that person, they might start crying. They might start laughing. They might start dancing. But it just seems like they're fully immersed in the moment and the environment, and whatever worries and concerns they had outside of that is gone. And I think that's just not just concerts and live events. That happens when you put your earbuds in or you're in the car blasting music. It's supposed to hit you in that way.
What would you say is the difference between maybe the older rappers versus the new up-and-coming rappers and their fans?
What's the difference between... So the difference between old rappers and new rappers... It's a good question. I think a lot of the older rappers they might be doing what the younger kids are doing now, and the younger rappers are doing what the older guys are doing now. I think they intermingle. As far as the crowd and the fans go, I think the older the artist is, the older the fans typically are, because they grew up with that artist and they themselves have gotten older, as opposed to a younger artist. A 19, 20-year-old rapper is more than likely going to have newer or younger fans as opposed to a 50-year-old guy. And, you know, this is not always the case, but I would say that the older crowds are typically more relaxed and subdued. If you were to go to a Rolling Stones concert, you're probably going to have less of a problem as opposed to going to unnamed 19-year-old artists.
So would you say that venues with like artists like Eminem or like E40 would have followings that are less, you know, modernized and more laid back and kind of with that older culture? And then if you would go forward in time to now, where we have artists like Playboi Carti and, you know, mosh pits and things like that, would you say that that is kind of like a divide of how the old and new kind of merge together?
Yeah, I would agree that an E40, an Eminem, a Jay-Z, I mean, now I'm forgetting some older artists, pardon me, but I think, yeah, they're definitely going to have a more laid-back crowd in the sense of maybe they don't want to cause a ruckus. They're probably enjoying themselves just as much as the younger kids, but the younger kids may be... this doesn't... I hate to put everybody in that same category, but there may be a little bit more of a chance of there being some issues due to ego or substances that were consumed beforehand.
I know you mentioned that someone had touched your camera. Have you ever seen an artist be threatened themselves, or have you seen security take anyone out of a venue?
I haven't seen any artists be directly threatened in person, thankfully. I have seen people forcefully be removed from events, whether it be an in-store signing, a concert, a club event. But once again, I don't want it to seem like there's a lot of bad in the music industry. This happens at sporting events. People get out of control and get tossed out of a stadium. So it happens with anything, right? There's unruly customers at stores that get thrown out. But yes, I've seen it, but it happens everywhere.
And why would artists have these pop-up events, like these signings, and what's the point? Why would they?
So before I answer, pop-up event and a signing, two separate things. Pop-up events usually unannounced or announced like a minute before.
Yep.
A signing or something is usually promoted well ahead of time. So do you want me to answer for both of those still?
Yeah, for both.
Okay. Artists have pop-up events, autograph signings in stores, concerts. It's a business at the end of the day, right? They're promoting a product, they're promoting a service, and by having these things, they're interacting with their clientele, their fans, and it's a way for them to promote and in turn bring in more revenue, which is good, right? So you don't want to sit at home and listen to your favorite musician or watch your favorite sports team and never have the chance to meet them. I think most people want to be able to connect with their favorite entertainer in person at some point. And even if it's for 30 seconds a minute and you waited online for 4 hours, at least you can say you shook the hand of your favorite rapper, your favorite baseball player, your favorite basketball player. You now feel a bit of a deeper connection with that person, even if it was just for a quick second.
Would you say that these pop-up events and signings, when artists like announce these like last moment, or they're hosting these, or they're doing things in public, would you say that they're kind of intentionally using the understanding, knowing that their fans are, you know, really excited to meet them, and kind of using that boom and that rush to gain that popularity, you know, kind of put themselves out there? Or would you say that it's kind of just a general thing that always happens?
I think specifically with pop-ups, since they're like, sometimes they're not even announced, right? You just kind of have to see the person at this location, and then that person tells that person and tells the person, and it just spreads like wildfire. But it is, I forgot the rest of your question. I'll rephrase it again. Repeat that last part to me again. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to understand, like, would you say that artists are kind of using like events like this to kind of like, you know, make themselves bigger, make themselves more known
Okay.
through that, you know, through that rush, through that excitement? Because sometimes there's too many people that show up at these events,
Right.
And then it gets like out of control.
Okay, so pop-up events, any kind of event, yeah, you can obviously attract your core fans. You could gain new fans simply because somebody walking by be like, what's going on here? Let me check out what it is. So yes, it helps them build a fan base, keep a fan base, and yeah, I think it comes down to just continuing to have a successful business and be a successful business person.
Have you yourself ever taken part in this crazy behavior at concerts and events? And when I ask that, I mean like not for the purpose of like photographing it, but like for your own thrill and enjoyment.
Good question. I'm not going to incriminate myself. Before I got in the industry, I would go to clubs specifically as a patron. And I didn't engage in criminal activity, but yeah, I wasn't like being the most saintly person at a club. I mean, is anybody supposed to be? But once it became a business of mine, and obviously there comes a level, you gain a level of professionalism and you take it more seriously. So yeah, when I was younger and I wasn't a professional photographer, yeah, I went to clubs for the purpose of going to a club and doing what you do at a club. Did that answer it? All right.
Lastly, is there anything you would like to add yourself?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the students and staff at Ohlone College. Although I didn't attend this school, it's in my city, Fremont. I like to think I'm one of the faces of my city. I represent it. I put it on my back. I put it on my shirt. So I definitely keep an eye on what everybody at this school is doing. It's once again, it's not the school I went to, but that doesn't matter. It's in my city, and I hope that everybody that comes out of the school, comes out of the film program and all the other programs here, gain a level of success and are happy in what they do. Other than that, I hope to keep working my way up the ladder. I'm not at the top. I don't think anybody should ever get to the top, because when you're at the top, the only other way to go is back down. So other than that, Stein Photography, real Fremont. Thank you for having me.
Before we close, could we have you walk off and then sit back down just for our footage?
Yeah, which way do you want me to walk?
Just
That's fine.
Walk that way and walk back down? Is this where I trip on something because it's Friday the 13th?